Well, it's happened again. I start by remembering. We remember Oklahoma City. We remember 9/11. Virginia Tech University. Columbine High School. And now the Cinema 16 in Aurora, Colorado. And maybe if you look at all those events and you see what's transpiring in the world, maybe at first you say, why? Why did this have to happen? Why did the world go so wrong that this becomes such a common event for us? Even in a day that we aspire that it wouldn't happen. But yet it has. I know when I heard the news of the shooting on that Thursday, early Friday morning actually, that happened, it just was amazing to me that here we go again. We had just come out of some of those events that we thought, well, we've taken care of all that. But if we look back through the history, there's always been somebody that has decided that this is a way they can make a name for themselves. And we may never know exactly what was in the mind of this young man when he decided to amass this arsenal of weapons, rifle, shotgun, and 2 handguns. And what inspired him to walk into this movie theater and then randomly fire on the patrons that are there. And we may never know the entire answers to that, but we still want to know why. We still want to try and feel what they feel. We want to know why in the world would something like this happen. I know back on 9/11 there were several people that wanted to know, where is God? Why couldn't this be prevented? What would have been the overarching idea that would have allowed us to make sure that this didn't happen again? But yet it does. Because we're human beings, and human beings fail. We may question in our minds as to where is God? And God is making His presence known to us and allowing us to be His presence to the people that have been affected. And I don't know if any of you have been affected directly. I mean, sometimes we think that Aurora, Colorado, it isn't that far, but it's far enough away from us that we're not impacted directly. Think of the community that is trying to surround those families at this time, and trying to comfort them and assure them that that their life is going to be okay. But they suffer because they've lost a loved one in a random shooting, a random act of violence that may never be explained to us. Why? Well, God doesn't have that answer for us either. When we have natural disasters, we always ask, why? Where is God? Why couldn't this have been prevented? But, you know, what happens in natural disasters, it's easy for us to explain or understand in that some of the kind of weather patterns that show up and take place in the shifting of our earth and everything create these natural disasters, and it just so happens that there are human beings residing there that they get caught up in the path of whatever's happening, whether it's a tornado or a tsunami or an earthquake. But what about this kind of violence? What about this when humans take other humans' lives? That's, I think, is the hardest one for us to understand. How could someone do that? Well, we may never know the answer to that question. We may never know why this young man decided to walk into that movie theater that evening. It may have been something in his past. It may have been something he sought in the future. But we never know. But the thing for us to remember today is that we hold that. There may not be many things that we can do, but we can hold those families up in prayer. We can hold that whole community up in prayer as they try to heal from this disaster. We can offer our help in other ways if the opportunity comes to us, whether that be financially or prayerfully or in that physical existence where we can be there to help someone that maybe we meet that had a direct connection with somebody that died. You see, that's why God uses us. God brings us together as a family to take care of each other, whether it be that distance away or right where we are. God calls upon us to take care of each other and to know that His presence is with us. The Scriptures all tell us that God's presence will be with us no matter what, in the times of joy and in the times of sorrow and disaster. And we need that comfort today, knowing that there may be some of us in this congregation, in this community, that is hurting because of loss there. Or maybe just wondering, why did this have to happen? So our task as a community of God, as a community following Christ, is to support them in prayer and support them any other way that we can, to make sure that they know that the love of God is surrounding them and taking care of them. That's why those little makeshift memorials show up in those places every time there's that kind of disaster. We want them to know that we are there with them and praying for them, and we'll do whatever we can to help them through that time. That's our task as Christians. That's what Jesus taught us. And that's how we should follow. To be the community of Christ that helps people through times of disaster, times like these. And that kind of leads me to the idea that I wanted to talk to you about this morning, of this time of change that we have. The Scripture that we have here, the Old Testament Scripture and the Ephesians passage, talks to us about the house of God. What is the house of God? David thought he knew what it was. David had recognized that God was with him. David recognized that God was that foundation that he had been walking on for all those years. That God was the one that helped him with the battles. That God had helped him organize these communities or these nations into a powerful nation. He recognized that God was the one that was instrumental in bringing that community and those nations together as one. And so he and all of his followers and his people built this magnificent palace for the King David. It was built with silver and gold and cedars and brick and all of the labor and the love that the people could bring into it, and it was magnificent. It had beautiful columns, it had beautiful spires, it had beautiful paintings and tapestries and all those things that make a house a home. And David felt comfortable there because he knew God had helped him create it. And as he looked around, he says, I feel so good here, but God needs a home. Now, I don't know what made David think that. I'm not quite sure what his thinking was, that because he had a nice home that God needed one too. But he wanted to build this magnificent temple in which God could reside, that God could be maybe contained in, that people could come to God and be a part of what was going on and know that God would be there. So he says, let's build this magnificent temple to our God. And at first Nathan thought it was a good idea, until God spoke to him in a dream and said, you know, Nathan, I've been traveling all my life. When I brought the people out of Egypt, I had them build a tabernacle that could be torn up, put up and torn down as many times as we needed to move. And that's where I was at. I was residing in that tabernacle. I was there when people came to me. I don't need a big palace or temple for people to come and worship to me. So go back and tell David, it's not necessary. That I will build my temple in a different way. And he kind of hints to it a little bit when he tells Nathan to tell David that I will make your name, I will make your family a great family. I will bring up out of your ancestors, out of your sons down through the ages, I will bring a great king. And we know as Christians that meant that